Malta and Gozo, and welcome to another episode of Lovin Daily. My name is John Paul, and today I'm joined by Lovin Malta's Editor-in-Chief, Tim Diakonou. Tim, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Before we get started, we will let you know of a competition we have running for 2 weeks, sponsored by PT-Matic Environmental Services, where each of you can win a recycled kayak, the world's first and only recycled kayak made exclusively from marine litter and fishing industry waste. All you need to do is send us your upcycled creations via a link that will show up in the caption at the end of this episode. And all we need is just your contact details and an image of your creation.
So, yes, Jay, as you said, all you need to do is just send in a photo of an upcycled creation, and it could be pretty much anything. So if you go into the link, you'll see some pretty great examples of this. It could be anything from a retro flower pot to a face mask made out of a milk carton. Just let your imagination run wild, and the winner will receive a kayak, which is obviously great, seeing as Malta's perfect for kayaking. So, moving on to our stories of the day. Malta confirms 35 new COVID cases and could extend the wage supplement scheme. A Maltese man has spoken out about how his life has remained in limbo 11 years after his arrest. Pregnant women are urging Malta to prioritize COVID-19 tests for women in spontaneous labour. Robert ABELA said he is open to a discussion on the future of political party media. And 3 Maltese boaters have rescued a drowning dog from the XBIEX Marina. Right, Jay, what do you have to say about COVID?
Another COVID update. Let's start off the week with some kind of positive news. There have been 35 new cases, but there were also 33 recoveries yesterday, bringing Malta's total to 668. At this point, the recoveries from the past 2 weeks are coming in, so those who tested positive about 2 weeks ago. So what we're starting to see is somewhat of a plateau in terms of Malta's COVID-19 cases. And when Prime Minister Robert ABELA was speaking to Lovin Malta yesterday in an interview, he had brought up we had discussed the wage supplement scheme and the possibility of extending it past September in light of the current economic situation with COVID-19 and how hard the tourism industry has been hit. Obviously, the wage supplement scheme applies to those who have been most affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, which in this case affects most of the tourism industry. And as part of it, as a reminder, it offers up to 800 euros per worker. The original plan is for it to go to the end of September, but Prime Minister ABELA suggested that there are discussions being had that it might extend further than that. He also talked about striking a balance between public health and the economy, and he praised the government's decisions and measurements in dealing with the pandemic so far. Tim, what do you think of it?
Yes, absolutely. So this wage supplement scheme was absolutely crucial in preserving jobs. Now the original plan was to keep it up till September. Now we know that this crisis will definitely last on for longer than perhaps we had originally expected it to. The World Health Organization is now saying it could take up to 2 years. I don't know how feasible this is, but you really never know. But I'm sure that the Prime Minister's comments, even though he didn't commit to it, to be fair, he just said it's open to it, but I'm sure it will satisfy people who work in the tourism industry. Moving on. So, just imagine this, right? You were arrested when you were 16 years old, 11 years have passed, and you have not yet been sentenced. This is exactly what happened to young Mason Nels 11 years ago. He was arrested as part of a sting operation involving drugs. Now, 11 years have passed and he has yet to be sentenced. And he spoke to Lovin Malta about his ordeal with his entire life hanging in the balance and the case constantly hovering above his head, but never really reaching its conclusion. So he said he had to sign a bail book, the police bail book, every single day for the first 6 years, that he had to even sign a bail book in a different town. So he lived in Santa Lucia, had to go all the way up to Lua every single day to sign this bail book. Sometimes the police weren't even there, they just have to wait. So his whole life just constantly hovering around this. He couldn't travel. His father lived in the UK, and he got very sick, and Mason couldn't even go up to be with him in his last days because of this, because of his bail conditions. And once he didn't sign the book, and he actually got sent to prison for 2 years. And now he's 27 years old. He said, like, my dreams, my hopes have been completely put on hold, or if not destroyed, because of this case constantly hovering over. And I think this is and the case hasn't, and he doesn't even know when he's going to be sentenced yet. I think it's a real clear example of how justice delayed just creates a huge injustice in and of itself. Like, we know this is a huge problem in Malta, that some cases drag on and on for ages, but it's important to know that for whatever reason, people's lives are hanging in the balance, and just the fact that the case is delayed ruins people's lives in the process. And this is a man's youth that he's never going to get back.
Absolutely. I mean, he developed a lot of anxiety because of it, a lot of mental health issues. He struggled to keep a job as well because of the stigma that comes with his case and whatnot. So very sorry for him. And as you said, it's justice denied. It kind of exposes the system here in Malta, and needs to be addressed for sure. Moving on to the next story today. Pregnant woman urged Malta to prioritize COVID-19 swabs for those in spontaneous labour. Now, while everything might be put on hold in COVID-19, pregnant women still have a due date, and they are more concerned now because some of the restrictions involved require them to wear face masks before getting a swab test, and even if they do get a swab test, it takes 48 hours for that to come into...
Just to clarify, unless they present a negative COVID test valid up to 48 hours before going into labour, exactly. They have to wear a face mask, and they're also not they can't be given a pain relieving Entonox. Again, this is unless they test negative 48 hours before going to labour. And pregnant women spoke out to Lovin Malta, discussing these restrictions and how it's how they feel about it, and also urging health authorities to kind of give priority to women entering spontaneous labour. Obviously, they're ones that have obviously deal with a lot the pressure of giving birth as well, and the stress of it is big enough, let alone to have to deal with these restrictions that obviously cause a lot of pain for them and a lot of stress and for them and their family. So they also made comparisons to staff workers on cruise liners who are able to get these rapid tests and receive them within 45 minutes, even before their cruise line passengers are at breakfast. So it's definitely feasible. This is something that hasn't been addressed yet for pregnant women throughout this pandemic. Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a difference. There's a bit of a delay between when the results have been concluded and when they have been delivered to the person. So there's quite a seeing as so many tests are carried out, there's quite a backlog in this in terms of delivering. Now, for most people, 24 hours is not such a big deal. However, when you're in labour, it is a big deal, and especially when you've been denied this pain relieving drug. And I mean I've never experienced it or will experience it, but from what I've heard, childbirth is quite painful as it is, let alone without this pain relieving drug. So I do think it's something that the health authorities should definitely take on board. Moving on, back to our interview, Lovin Malta's interview with the Prime Minister yesterday, our first interview with Robert ABELA. If you're interested, you can watch it on lovinmalta.com. And we asked him about his opinion on the future of political party media, of Net and One. Now, he said that they are, now he defended them on the grounds of media pluralism. So he said there are lots of media houses have their own voice, the church has its own voice, so why shouldn't the political parties have their own voice as well? However, this came with a couple of caveats where he said that the information that they provide has to be factual. However, and he also said that he is also quite open to discussing the future of political party media, which is I mean, it's not something that the Prime Minister usually says, right? No,
I mean, at least not for Malta, obviously. But I mean, whilst many of us can be for pluralism, party media, it's hard to see party media as media when most of the time they are political propaganda machines. And on this note, Lovin Malta has is mounting a court case. Khashoggi's, Lovin Malta's Khashoggi is mounting a court case to take these party medias to court and hopefully see how it all pans out. Moving on to our last story of today, 3 Maltese boaters.
Yeah, sorry, just a small note about that. The issue over here is that this is also coming at a time when the Broadcasting Authority is imposing some pretty crazy measures on PBS to ensure that they stick to the constitutional obligation to impartiality, and what they're doing over here is blocking journalists' questions from airing on TVM when the subject matter is about COVID, meanwhile you have One and Net not getting regulated whatsoever, and yes, that seems to be in breach of the constitution, but let's wait and see.
Yes, moving on to our last story of the day, 3 Maltese boaters rescued a drowning dog from the British Marina. Quite a strange story to pop up over the weekend, and quite shocking as well, actually. A dog who is now called Sky was found to be drowning in British Marina. Basically what happened was Tiziana and Etienne, who spoke to Lovin Malta about the incident, set off on a day on the kayaks in the marina, but just as soon as they set off, they saw something wading in the water. They assumed it was a duck at first, but then after a couple of people cried out for help, they realized it was a dog. They approached the dog to try and help it. I believe it was a boxer, so quite a medium-sized dog. They tried to help it, and as Etienne went to help the dog, out of fear, it kind of gashed him on the nose. Amidst all that was going on, they also cried out for help because the dog was panicking, and they weren't able to rescue him by themselves. And a sailing boat nearby heard their cries, turned back, and managed to haul the dog up onto their boat. And the dog was then later taken to obviously the APH hospital, where it's currently being cared for. Animal welfare were able to track down the owner because the dog did in fact have a chip, but the owner said he had given it to, or someone had adopted it the day before, but that person also said he didn't want the dog any longer. So it's a bit of a mystery of how the dog ended up drowning in British Marina, whether he was put there intentionally or whether he escaped and somehow in panic ended up going into the marina. It's good to know.
Being at the right place at the right time.
Exactly.
That was lucky that there were these people.
Absolutely, there. Absolutely. The dog was under the water, in fact, by the time they got there. So it was literally a matter of seconds to save him. It's good to know that Sky is at APH hospital and he is recovering. And his rescuers, Tiziana and Etienne, hope that they'll be able to foster him until they find him a suitable and safe home.
Yes, and that's all for today. A reminder of our competition that's ongoing with PT Matic Environmental Services, and where you can win a recycled kayak. Great to go, exploring the Maltese coastline.
Absolutely.
While summer is still with us. All you need to do is send in your upcycled products through a link that you can find in the caption of this video, and be as creative as you like with it. So as we had said before, there were some people who were giving examples of a face mask made out of a milk carton. Some people were showing off their do-it-yourself bulbs. Be as creative as you like.
Exactly.
And the winner will.
There are no limits here.
There are no limits here. So that's all for today. Make sure to keep in touch with everything that's going on in this country on www.lovinmalta.com. Until then, have a day full of loving.